Natasha Lyonne opens up about her recent relapse with a level of candor that feels both disarming and deeply human, peeling back the layers of a life lived in the spotlight while wrestling with struggles that are often hidden in the shadows. She doesn't begin with excuses or dramatics, but with a quiet acknowledgement of the truth. Recovery is not linear, and even after years of progress, the past can resurface in unexpected and humbling ways. For Lyonne, this relapse was not a sudden into chaos, but rather a slow unraveling, subtle at first, almost imperceptible, like a thread loosening from a carefully woven fabric. She describes how the pressures of work, the constant demands of being on, and the emotional toll of navigating personal relationships began to accumulate, creating a kind of internal noise that she struggled to quiet. It wasn't that she forgot everything she had learned in recovery. In fact, she insists the opposite is true. She knew exactly what was happening, which in some ways made it harder, not easier. There's a particular kind of heartbreak, she explains, in recognizing your own patterns as they unfold and still feeling powerless to stop them in the moment. She reflects on how relapse is often misunderstood, especially by those who view recovery as a fixed destination rather than an ongoing process. People like the idea of a clean, triumphant ending, she says, but life doesn't really work that way. Instead, she frames her experience as part of a broader continuum, one that includes setbacks as well as victories. There's no attempt to glamorize what happened. If anything, she is careful to strip away any illusion that relapse carries anything but consequences. She talks about the physical and emotional toll, the way it disrupts not only your own sense of stability but also the trust of the people around you. And yet, even in describing those consequences, there's a thread of compassion running through her words, not just for others but for herself. That self-compassion, she admits, is something she had to learn over time, and it remains one of the most difficult aspects of recovery. Lyonne also speaks about the strange duality of being both a public figure and a private person during such a vulnerable time. There's an inherent tension in wanting to be honest while also protecting parts of your life from scrutiny. She acknowledges that her career has, in many ways, been intertwined with her personal struggles, and that audiences often feel a sense of ownership over her story. But she pushes back gently against that idea, emphasizing that while she is willing to share, she is not obligated to expose every detail. There's a difference between honesty and self-erasure, she explains, noting that maintaining boundaries is an essential part of her ongoing recovery. In discussing what led up to the relapse, Lyonne points to a combination of factors rather than a single cause. Stress, fatigue, unresolved emotional wounds, these are not new elements in her life, but they took on a different weight this time. She describes how easy it is to rationalize small decisions, to convince yourself that you're still in control, that you can handle just a little more than you should. Those rationalizations, she says, are often the first warning signs, the subtle shifts in thinking that precede more visible changes in behavior. And yet, recognizing those signs doesn't automatically grant immunity. Awareness is powerful, she says, but it's not the same as invincibility. There's also a sense of reckoning in her reflection, a willingness to confront not just the relapse itself but what it reveals about her current state of mind. She talks about the importance of honesty, not just with others, but with oneself. That kind of honesty can be uncomfortable, even painful, but she sees it as necessary for growth. It's not about assigning blame or dwelling on mistakes, but about understanding the underlying issues that contributed to the relapse. In her case, that meant taking a closer look at how she was coping with stress, how she was prioritizing her well-being, and where she might have been neglecting her own needs. At the same time, Lyonne is careful not to frame the relapse as a complete undoing of her progress. She emphasizes that the years she has spent in recovery still matter, that they have given her tools and insights that she didn't have before. Those tools, she says, are what allowed her to recognize the relapse and seek help before things spiraled further out of control. There's a quiet resilience in that acknowledgement, a recognition that even in moments of, there is still strength. It's not about being perfect, she says, it's about being willing to come back. She also speaks about the role of community in her recovery, highlighting the importance of having people who understand what she's going through. Whether it's friends, family, or support groups, those connections provide a sense of grounding that can be difficult to find elsewhere. She describes how isolating addiction can be, how it creates a barrier between you and the people who care about you. Breaking through that isolation requires vulnerability, a willingness to admit that you need help. For someone in the public eye, that vulnerability can feel particularly daunting, but Lyonne insists that it's worth it. "You can't do this alone," she says simply. Another aspect she touches on is the stigma surrounding relapse, both within society at large and within recovery communities themselves. There's often an unspoken expectation that once you've reached a certain point, you should be beyond slipping back. That expectation, she argues, can actually make it harder for people to be honest about their struggles. She hopes that by speaking openly about her experience, she can help challenge that stigma and create space for more nuanced conversations about recovery. "Relapse doesn't mean failure," she says. "It means you're human." As she continues to reflect, there's a sense that this experience, while difficult, has also provided an opportunity for deeper self-understanding. She talks about the importance of recalibrating, of taking a step back and reassessing what she needs in order to stay grounded. That might mean making changes to her schedule, setting firmer boundaries, or finding new ways to manage stress. It's an ongoing process, one that requires constant attention and adjustment. But she approaches it with a sense of determination rather than defeat, viewing it as part of the work of living rather than a punishment for past mistakes. Lyonne's perspective on recovery is notably pragmatic. She doesn't present it as a grand narrative of redemption, but as a series of choices made day by day. Some days are easier than others, and there are no guarantees. But there is a commitment to keep going, to keep trying, even when it's difficult. In the end, her openness feels less like a confession and more like an invitation to see recovery in a more honest, compassionate light, and to recognize that setbacks are not the end of the story. They are, instead, moments that call for reflection, for adjustment, and for renewed commitment. Lyonne doesn't claim to have all the answers, and she doesn't pretend that the road ahead will be easy. But she speaks with a clarity that comes from experience, a recognition that growth often comes from the very places we would rather avoid. Her story, as she tells it, is not about falling down, but about what happens next. The choice to get back up, to learn, and to keep moving forward, even when the path is uncertain. And in that choice, there is something quietly powerful, a reminder that resilience is not about never breaking, but about finding the strength to rebuild, again and again, in the face of whatever challenges arise. Do you enjoy the video? Therefore, remember to like and comment.